welcome to the Learning Experience powered by CAST. I'm one of your hosts, Kelly Suding.
And I'm Luis Perez.
And I'm Brian Dean.
We are three educators here ready to break down barriers until learning has no limits. Let's do this.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Learning Experience powered by CAST. I'm really excited today to share some work that we've been doing with Carnegie Learning as part of a Gates-funded project. And so I'm here with April Murphy from Carnegie Learning. April, can you please go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the work that you do at Carnegie Learning?
Hi, Luis. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. I am the Senior Director of Learning Engineering at Carnegie Learning. I've been with the company about 6 years. And I lead a number of projects that, kind of bridge education research and software. So I direct the team of learning engineers. We do a lot of large-scale research that covers ground from innovative assessment to supports for motivation, engagement, and persistence in our digital learning platforms. And then I also lead development of Upgrade, our open source A/B testing platform for edtech software.
Wow, that is a lot. And I noticed that you mentioned some UDL terms in there, right, around motivation and persistence in learning. So that's awesome. And we were so glad to be able to connect with you through the Gates grant that we've been working on together. So I want to get into that a little bit because as part of this grant, we really wanted to focus on capacity building around universal design for learning and accessibility. What did accessibility look like for Carnegie Learning prior to engaging in this work?
Yeah, great question. So coming into the grant, our company, Carnegie Learning, actually had a pretty solid foundation in accessibility. We were meeting ADA and Section 508 compliance. We worked to adhere to our web content accessibility guidelines so that it might include support for screen readers and keyboard navigation. We had BPATs available for districts that required them. For our print materials, we had materials available in formats like Braille and audio and large print for students with IEPs. And also, we had collaborated with some folks at CAST in a prior project that focused on developing individualized supports for math learning for students with reading difficulties. Since that project, which ended a couple of years ago, we actually have brought someone on staff who worked with us on that project through CAST. So we became quite a bit more familiar with UDL through that work, just really digging deep into developing different kinds of reading supports for students who are struggling readers and looking at how that impacts their math outcomes. That said, a number of our existing products, in particular the Clear Math secondary curriculum, follows a number of UDL principles. And so we've kind of, had the thread of UDL through our existing work, and then looking for more opportunities to learn more because it's such a comprehensive framework.
Absolutely, right. Even when you do have a strong foundation, which it sounds like you did, sometimes it's about bringing more people into the conversation as well. So we know that within each of our organizations, right, we have different roles as well, and sometimes it's important to just bring additional people into the conversation. And I love that you talked about reading and math, right? Something that I often try to emphasize is that any math problem is also a reading problem. And so we need to make sure that we provide supports for reading, even within a math problem. So I'm guessing that that's one of the things that you try to do through the application of UDL.
Yeah, that's right. One of the things that, we worked with some folks in CAST to help uncover is really how students who might be language learners or might be struggling readers on different dimensions, their reading difficulties can really mask their math skills. If you provide supports, different, types of adaptive features that can help them with their reading challenges, then it can sort of unmask and uncover their math abilities, because math can often be very reading centric, they're not, maybe not able to focus on the mathematics as much if they're blocked by the challenges of reading. So providing those supports can really help reveal their math abilities more.
Right. And then from an assessment perspective, it means that we have a more accurate measure of what they know in terms of math, right? If we remove the barrier related to reading, then we can focus on their true understanding of the math concepts.
Yes, and that's one thing that we're also looking to understand as we explore more deeply into different ways of measuring what students know in terms of assessment.
Tell me a little bit how you mentioned that you already had a good foundation in terms of UDL. How has the work at Carnegie Learning evolved through this partnership that we had? We did a series of training webinars, really focusing on different aspects of UDL, accessibility, social media, how to design professional development, and I'm sure I'm missing one in there, but basically we try to provide some capacity building. So how has your work evolved as a result of that partnership?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, the partnership has really evolved in interesting ways over time. So, the collaboration for developing reading supports, it really helped deepen our existing familiarity with UDL principles, even though that's always been a part of how we think about product development. But more recently, with this work with CAST on innovative assessment, it has pushed us to think about accessibility in some new ways. One of the ways that we focused on is balancing accessibility with feasibility, especially when we're trying to develop and pilot new features with specific partner school districts. And when doing something like that, you kind of have to make intentional decisions about what's possible at each stage. So we want to make sure that we think about accessibility first, and make that part of the initial development process instead of an afterthought. But also we want to be able to get our new ideas and prototypes in front of our partners so they can provide feedback and we can continue to iterate on that work.
Well, and you just reminded me of the other session that we did, which is around co-design, thinking about the ways in which we can co-design tools, right? So that we're designing with people and not just for people. And we're basing our designs on accurate assumptions or not basing them on misconceptions or assumptions that we don't understand about them. So it sounds like you're approaching accessibility from that perspective, but very user-focused, user-centered. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. User-centered design is super important for us, and getting as much feedback from the users, whether those users are teachers, principals, administrators, or students, really is incredibly valuable to us and directly informs our product development.
That's great. And I know one area that we really focus when we looked at universal design for learning, this idea of learner variability, and this idea of access as well, and agency. So can you tell me a little bit about can you share an example of how you're approaching design with an eye towards considering learner variability and access?
Yeah. So one example that I think really stands out to me in how we've sort of expanded our thinking about learners that we're designing for is this work that we're doing in developing new data insights for teachers. We've been applying those principles to adult learners, so not just our students, but the instructors, the principals, the admins who are interpreting data and making instructional decisions or resource allocation decisions based on the data that they're seeing. And so it's a different challenge than designing for students. And it's really kind of pushed us to think more broadly about learner variability across the board. On the product side, thinking about learner variability has sort of meant making sure that every student can access the content and demonstrate what they know. But when you bring that to teachers, you might ask questions like, how should we present information in ways that work for different kinds of decision makers? And how do we reduce the cognitive load for a teacher who's, navigating 30 students worth of data? And it's a different kind of perspective taking, but one that we really don't want to overlook. Another area where our approach has evolved is in the use of generative AI. So that kind of puts more iterative work directly in the hands of designers and or subject matter experts. So an example of this is that we had a user experience designer who didn't really have software engineering background at all, use Gen AI coding tools to create a working prototype of an interactive learning tool all by herself, rather than having to spec it out and then hand it off to a separate development team. That was sort of a shift from our, typical order processes. And so it's really, accelerated our ability to prototype and iterate on real tools and make sure to get them in front of users quickly in the service of that user-centered design approach.
Oh, I love that. So it sounds like you're doing some vibe coding. So for those that are not familiar with it, vibe coding really is coding without code, right? You can use generative AI prompts and it can help you create a prototype fairly quickly. So as you said, you can get that prototype out in front of users and get their feedback fairly quickly. It's not a fully functioning application, but it kind of gives you the broad strokes in terms of functionality so that you can refine it, right, through interaction with the learners.
Yeah, and that's right. I mean, I want to be clear that, we did use our software engineering team to, plug everything in directly into our product when we released those tools as an A/B test. But just in terms of quickly getting working prototypes, even before they get in front of the users, but just for the team to iterate on and to think about, make sure that the colors are accessible, make sure that it's working, the way we expect it to. It's just a different approach, and it doesn't eliminate the need for software engineering, but it kind of accelerates that sort of, rapid prototyping and experimentation that we want to keep doing just so we can continuously get better.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for adding that clarification, right? It's just a step in the process and a way for us to get something generated fairly quickly. And like you said, not just for the end user, but also for the team to chime in, and so that you can iterate and eventually get to something that's fully working. So I appreciate that. So as you continue this work, what are you most excited about in terms of improving access and fairness in assessment for all learners?
Yeah, that's such a great question. One thing I have to say that I'm excited about is the opportunity to basically rethink what assessment looks like. What if this assessment wasn't this separate activity that, interrupts learning? Everyone has to stop what they're doing and take away, not just hours, but days of instructional time over the course of a school year. Yeah. So having that kind of fully embedded formative approach, it really can open up so many opportunities, whether it's for students to demonstrate their understanding in different ways rather than a high stakes format on just one particular day. We know from, the kinds of, user-centered design and student interview work that we've done that most students, including those high performers, they really feel the stress that the assessment days cause.
Right.
They don't need to. And on the instructor side, instead of waiting for just a summative result, you can give them a richer and more continuous picture of student understanding that they can actually act on in the moment instead of just waiting for those, time periods when the summative results come in.
Absolutely. And, it's really thinking about assessment in a different way. We often just think about assessment of learning, but it sounds like you're really reframing it as assessment as learning.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. And I will say that this idea of continuously assessing students as they work through the curriculum, it's actually what Mafia, Carnegie Learning's intelligent tutoring system, it already does. It does now and has been doing that for years. But what's exciting is kind of expanding that thinking into new areas. So not just Mafia, but using AI to analyze open-ended responses or non-traditional inputs like voice or drawing. And, if we can just sort of moving beyond whether the student got the right answer to, can they explain their thinking? Tell us about the strategies. What's the path that they took? It just tells you so much more about them. The challenge is that doing this probably requires a little bit of a cultural shift. in some ways, and for some people, maybe even like that might mean fundamentally changing, how people think about what assessment is for and what it even looks like. But I think that we're ready for that conversation. And I think that, if we have that conversation and we can get there, then exactly like you said, Luis, assessment stops being something that takes time away from learning and it just becomes part of learning.
And it's really helpful not only for learners, right, and the instructors, the teachers, to get that sort of just-in-time information, but it's good for the curriculum too, especially as we move into an age where AI can adapt things on the fly, to have that kind of ongoing assessment that makes changes as needed instead of waiting all the way until the end, which is more like a retrofit kind of approach. But as you mentioned, like anything that's new and different, it does take time for the culture or the mindset, right? We talk about mindset a lot with UDL. It may take a little bit of time for the mindset to come around, but at some point there'll be a tipping point, right? Where you kind of work slowly, and eventually there's a tipping point where you start doing things in a different way. So I'm really excited to hear about that.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of thinking about it, because I think this is just one of those things that, especially just in terms of UDL principles, it's not an approach or a way of thinking that is only helpful for some learners. Thinking about assessment being part of learning, that's really helpful for all learners, not just some.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. There's also the fact that, like, we often, and this is what I've seen a lot, like, we will practice UDL in terms of the instruction and how we present information and how we engage learners. And then we get to the assessment, and the assessment kind of falls back on a very traditional approach. So we want to make sure that we bring that creativity and that flexibility throughout the process, right?
Yeah.
Not just to instruction, but also to assessment.
Yes, 100%.
So it kind of goes all the way around, right? It's like a feedback loop, if you will. So what would be sort of one tip that you would share? There's another organization out there that wants to sort of do the similar work that you've been doing on making assessments more inclusive and accessible, which can be a lot, right? We just talked about the idea of shifting mindset and how that could take time. What would be one tip that you would share?
Yeah, I think that my biggest tip would be to build a culture of, rapid prototyping, rapid experimentation into your process from the start. So whether you're, kind of adopting UDL principles or best practices in accessibility, or working to implement, feedback from co-design, inclusive co-design, that you still need to know like which specific implementation actually works best for your learners. So you might have a couple of really good ideas that, follow these principles, but the best way to answer those questions is using real data from real users, and related to that, like I would say, don't wait until something is perfect to test it. The earlier that you can get something in front of real learners, the faster you learn, and the better your product gets.
I love that. So basically, don't let perfect be the enemy of better.
Yes, for sure. I mean, and if I can make a quick plug, I just want to call out Upgrade, our open source teaching platform. Yeah, it's been just invaluable for helping us with these kinds of questions and to understand what interventions and changes actually work. You can take two different approaches to presenting assessment data in an accessible format and, use A/B testing in front of your learners or your users to measure which one leads to better outcomes. And, that said, like, I will say that using A/B testing mostly applies to, digital learning platforms. You have to have data instrumentation, available to collect your fine-grained student data or your outcomes that you're looking to measure. But that is where there is a lot of assessment happening anyway, in the digital realm. And even when you're looking at like multimodal tools that give students different ways to express their knowledge, like a drawing tool, for instance, if they're well instrumented in a way that you can extract user outcome data from those tools, they can really benefit enormously from this kind of experimentation. You might think that you already know, what sort of feels more accessible or more effective, but the data can really surprise you sometimes.
Absolutely. Data informed, right? We want to be data informed rather than, I mentioned vibe coding earlier, but we don't want to just go by vibes all the time. So people can find out about the Upgrade platform. Is that at upgradeplatform.org? Is that right?
Yes, that's right. So that has some links to the GitHub repo where the source code is. Again, it's open source. There's also some links to research papers. Yeah, great place to find more about Upgrade. Or you can just reach out to me directly, amurphy@carnegielearning.com. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, April, for joining us today and sharing this amazing work that you're doing with Carnegie Learning. And we've really enjoyed the partnership with CAS. Even before I started working with you, I know that you had done some great work with CAS, and I was just happy to be a small part of that over the last year or so. Thank you for joining us. And if people want to find out more, where can they find Carnegie Learning?
Yeah, thank you so much, Luis. I just want to say that CAST is an absolutely exceptional organization. So thrilled to be partnering with you now. In the past, hope our partnership can continue. There's just so much to learn that your organization has to offer. Yeah, we've just been thrilled to work with you. And in terms of learning more about Carnegie Learning, we have our website, carnegielearning.com. And we are, in fact, all over the socials. We're Carnegie Learning at Carnegie Learning on Instagram, Carnegie Learning on LinkedIn. We're on TikTok at Carnegie.Learning. We're on YouTube, Carnegie Learning. And finally, on X, we are Carnegie Learn without the ing.
Wow, you really got all the socials covered.
We're all covered. Yes, we are.
So look for either Carnegie Learning or Carnegie Learn in your favorite platform, and you will get some of the excellent resources and information that Carnegie Learning provides for the community. So again, April, thank you so much. I really appreciated this conversation. I appreciated your insights into inclusive assessment. And of course, I really appreciated working with you over the last year.
Thank you, Luis. Likewise, such a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Learning Experience Podcast. We are so glad you're part of this conversation.
And if you're like me and today's episode sparked some ideas or got your brain flowing, well, just remember there's so much more to explore out there.
And remember that CAS is leading the way when it comes to accessibility, workforce innovation, professional development, and research.
So visit cast.org to dive deeper. That's CAST.org, and keep learning with us.